Hello, my name is Nicole Barton, and today I will be demonstrating third grade multiple strategy instruction for collaborative strategic reading. Okay, third grade. I need everybody to start making their way to their tables, please, for reading. On your way there, if you could stop by the back table and pick up today's mentor text, a piece of scratch paper, and a pencil, that would be great. And we will get started. All right, third grade, I need your eyes, ears, and voices off in 5, 4. Perfect. All right, so we're going to get started on our reading for today. Everybody should have a mentor text. Put it up in the air if you have it. Perfect. Everybody should have a scratch piece of paper. Put it up in the air if you have it. Very good. And lastly, everybody should have a pencil. Hold it high if you have it. Great. Okay, so today we're going to learn about some strategies that we can use while we're reading. Strategies that we can use that are going to help us understand the text better. So let me tell you what this is called. We are going to learn about something called collaborative reading strategy. Listen to that again. Collaborative reading strategy. Everybody say it with me. Ready? Collaborative reading strategy. Very good. Now, that's a whole lot of words to say, isn't it? The whole big mouthful. Trying to say it. That's collaborative reading strategy. Collaborative reading. It's a whole lot. So sometimes when things are a whole big mouthful of words, we shorten them down. So instead of saying collaborative reading strategy, you might hear Miss Barton say CSR, which also stands for collaborative reading strategy. I just made it smaller so that I don't have to say all those big words and it get all fumbled up. Okay, so if you hear Miss Barton say CSR, what does that mean? What am I talking about? Collaborative reading strategy. You're right. Very good. So now we know what the name of what we're learning is today. What do you think CSR or collaborative reading strategy means? Think about that for a minute. Collaborative reading strategy. What do you think it means? Turn and talk to your neighbor about it. Tell your neighbor what you think CSR, collaborative learning strategy, means. Here's some good conversations going on. So let me tell you, to understand what CSR, collaborative reading strategy, means, we're going to break it down into 2 separate parts, okay? First, we're going to look at the first word, collaborative. Who has heard that word before? Has anybody ever heard Miss Barton use the word collaborative in our classroom? Yep. What do you think it means? What do I mean when I say collaborative? Yeah, it means we're working together. That's great. You are working together with a partner, with a group, with all of your peers. We're working together collaboratively. Together, cooperatively. Okay, so that's what collaboratively means. Let's talk about the second part of the word, or of the title. Reading strategies. What do you think reading strategies means? About that, what do you think it means when we talk about reading strategies? right. A reading strategy is a plan or a strategy that we're going to use that's going to help us understand what we're reading. That's what a reading strategy is, okay? So, collaborative strategic reading is working together using a plan or a strategy to understand what you're reading. Now, when we use collaborative reading strategy, there are 4 different parts to it. I want everybody to look up here at the chart here in the corner. And we're going to talk about the different parts of CSR strategies. So our first strategy we use with CSR is called preview. The second strategy is called click and plunk. The third strategy of CSR is get the gist. And our fourth strategy of CSR is wrap up. Wrap up. Okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about each one of these, and we're going to see how they're used to understand and how they help us understand what we're reading, okay? So everybody look at the order. Notice that preview comes first. Preview comes before reading. And when do you think wrap up happens? Wrap up happens when you are finished reading. So you've got preview before you read and wrap up after you read. What do you think you do with click and plunk and get the gist? Well, those are used during your reading. So during our reading is when we use the strategies click and plunk and get the gist to help us comprehend our reading. All right? So we're going to practice this. We're going to practice all these steps. I'm going to model for you how to use CSR with the first 2 sections of our mentor text. Everybody grab your mentor text. And Miss Barton has lost her page. Let me find it. There it is. Okay, I want everybody to take a look at your mentor text. So we know that the first step in our collaborative reading strategy is preview. Good readers always begin by previewing their text before they read it. So, I should probably come back over and explain this to you. So when we preview, there are 3 different steps to the preview process. You begin by scanning your text. Then, after you scan your text, you then brainstorm what you already know from your scan. What did you see in your scan? And so now what do you already know about the story? The third step in preview is to predict what you will learn. You're going to think about the scan. You're going to think about what you already know, and you're going to use that to predict what you might learn from reading our text. So I'm going to start by scanning the first page here. I'm going to start by scanning this first page of our mentor text. Everybody lay this one on top. Okay? So looking at this, I see the title Pioneers on the Oregon Trail, right up here, this big heading. Well, I know that Pioneers on the Oregon Trail is an informational text, and informational texts often contain graphic, that's okay, often contain graphic features such as titles, headings, maps, or illustrations, or captions, or bold text, italic text, and sidebars, okay? So when we preview a text, we want to look for these features, okay? So I'm going to begin by scanning the first page. I see the title, Pioneers on the Oregon Trail, okay? And that's at the top of the page. And I know now that this is going to be the topic of our text, Pioneers on the Oregon Trail. I also see two bold-faced headings, The Way West and Packing for the Journey. So that indicates that maybe we're going to learn something about their packing and their journey west. I also see italicized text on the side here. This means that this is telling me that this is a quote because it's italic. But how else, looking at that, how else do we know that that's a quote? Because it has quotation marks, you're right. And so when there's quotation marks around something, that means that that is something that somebody actually said. We are quoting somebody. So those quotation marks indicate that something is a quote. So that's another way to know that that was in there. Below the quote, I see a picture of a covered wagon. And then at the very bottom of the page, I see a timeline of past events. So I really was able to find a lot of things on that first page from my scan that I'm going to be able to now use as I begin brainstorming. So I'm going to brainstorm now what I already know from my scan. Everybody look up here at the board. Miss Barton I have 5 different headings up on the board. We have brainstorm, predict, click and clunk. I'm sorry, I have 6. This one was hiding down here. Get the gist, questions, and review. So we're going to work through each one of these steps. I want everybody to take a look at the brainstorm section. So we just scanned our mentor text. Now we're going to brainstorm right here. I'm going to brainstorm what I know. So from watching Westerns or cowboy movies, I know that pioneers traveled in wagons. So I'm going to write that. And I also know that the pioneers traveled from east to west. So I'm going to write that up here too. They traveled east to west. So that's what I already know about the text from looking at the graphic features on our text and from my own personal experiences. Okay? So now that we have brainstormed, now I'm ready to make predictions based on the clues of the text and what I already know, based on my brainstorm and my scan. So I'm going to come over here to my predict section, and I'm going to make some predictions. When we make a prediction, we then must tell why we think so. What makes us think this about our prediction? So, based on the title, the headings, the picture of the covered wagon, I predict that I will learn about the pioneers' journey west to Oregon in covered wagons. Based on the quote that I saw on the mentor text, I also predict that I will learn what the journey was like for the pioneers. So I'm going to write that here too. What? Like for pioneers. Okay? Based on the second heading of the text, I predict that one of the things that I will learn is how and what the pioneers packed in their journey. So I'm going to write that as well. I predict I will learn what the pioneers packed for their journey. Okay? So now we have our brainstorm here. We know that pioneers traveled in covered wagons and they traveled east to west. From that, I predict that I will learn about the pioneers' journey to the west journey west to Oregon in covered wagons. Sorry guys, I got a little tongue-tied. I will learn what the journey was like for the pioneers, and I also predict I will learn about what the pioneers packed on their journey. Okay? So, have I done all of the steps in our preview? Yes. I scanned my text, I brainstormed what I knew, and I predicted what I will learn. So now, what do you think I'm ready to do? I'm ready to start reading the text. You're right. So, you know what? Before we read the text, I should probably explain the other two strategies, but we will practice them after we read, since we said that click and clunk take place during our reading, right? So let me explain click and clunk. When we are reading, we should be actively monitoring our comprehension by noticing what we do and what we don't understand. Okay, does that make sense? So when you're reading a text, as a good reader, you should be monitoring what you understand from that text and what you don't understand from that text. And then we use fix-up strategies to resolve any problems or confusions we had during the text, what we didn't understand. Okay? So this is referred to, that's what we refer to as click and clunk. These are the words and the concepts whose meanings we understand. Click, like a train rolling down the track. And then words and concepts whose meanings we don't understand, like clunk, like when we hit an obstacle. So when you hit a word meaning clunk, and you can use a fix-up strategy, such as our vocabulary strategy that we learned. Who remembers what our vocabulary strategy is? Raise your hands if you remember the vocabulary strategy that we learned not that long ago. Okay, so we use the vocabulary strategy for figuring out the meaning of an unfamiliar word by using the context and the word part clues together. All right? That makes sense? Okay. So, I'm going to model for you how to use the first 4 steps in the vocabulary strategy to figure out word meaning clumps. And I have the first 4 steps written up here on the board as a little reminder. Let's review those really quick, okay? The vocabulary strategy. Step number 1, context clues. Step 2, breaking words into parts. Step 3, guessing. Guess the meaning using the context clues. And step 4, try out your meaning. Okay, so I'm going to model this for you. I'm going to read you the first paragraph of our mentor text, Pioneers of the Oregon Trail. So I want everybody to look at their mentor text and look at the first bold-faced heading that says The Way West. Then I want everybody to find the very first paragraph under that heading and follow along with me as I read it aloud, okay? All right, voices up. Are you ready? In the early 1800s, Lewis and Clark explored the territory west of the Mississippi. No one knew what they would find. As they traveled, they made maps. They wrote in their journals. They described miles and miles of beautiful land with tall trees, good soil, and rushing rivers. So, after reading that paragraph, I'm just not sure that I know or I understand what the word territory means. So I just think that word is unfamiliar to me. And that's a clunk. That's a clunk that we've got to resolve and fix up. Okay? So I'm going to take my crown off. Everybody knows that it's still Miss Barton's turn to talk, right? Okay. Yeah, it's just not wanting to stay on my head today. All right. So we are going to do the first 4 steps of the vocabulary strategy for the word territory. So I'm going to write the word territory up here under my heading, click and clunk. Territory. All right. So step 1 of the vocabulary strategy says that we look for context clues. Okay? So I'm going to read the words and the phrases and the sentences surrounding territory to see if I can find any context clues that will help me in my understanding of the word. Okay? So I want everybody to find the 5th sentence. The 5th sentence. The 5th sentence says, who can read the 5th sentence for me? Well, you know what? Listening to that sentence, I think that I found a synonym for the word territory. Listen to this. In this sentence, the phrase, miles and miles of beautiful land. I wonder if territory might have something to do with land. Well, let's see. Step 2A is break into parts. Well, looking at the first paragraph, I don't see any meaningful prefixes or suffixes. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and skip step number 2, and I'm going to move on to step number 3, which says to use context clues found in step 1 to help you guess the meaning of the word. Well, because of the phrase miles and miles, I think territory might mean a big area of land. What do you think? Think about that. Miles and miles of beautiful land. Miles and miles of beautiful land would be a big area of land. So let's see, step 4, let's find out. Step 4 says try out your meaning. So I'm going to substitute big area of land for the word territory when I read this paragraph. Okay, ready? I'm going to reread the paragraph or reread the sentence. You don't need to listen to the whole paragraph. I will reread the sentence substituting the words and listen to see if it makes sense, okay? It says, Lewis and Clark explored the big area of land west of the Mississippi. Did that sentence make sense? Yeah, it did. It did make sense. So, you think that's a pretty good, accurate meaning of the word territory? Yeah, sure is. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. I'm going to write the meaning of territory here under the word is a big area. A big area of land. Does that make sense? Everybody understand how Miss Barton used the steps of the vocabulary strategy to help me understand the meaning of the unfamiliar word? Very good. All right. We will keep moving then. The next thing that we do during CSR is we get the gist. See if I can. There we go. We got it. So good readers can identify the most important ideas of what they're reading. They get the gist, they comprehend what they are reading. Getting the gist means shrinking the paragraph into a main idea statement that tells other readers and ourselves the most important information in the text. So this process of shrinking the text into a main idea, what is it called? It's called get the gist. Right. So I'm going to model the steps of paragraph shrinking to get the gist of the first paragraph, okay? So I'm going to reread the first paragraph of The Way West to you. I want you to listen and follow along. Are you ready? In the early 1800s, Lewis and Clark explored Let me start that over. In the early 1800s, Lewis and Clark explored the territory west of the Mississippi. No one knew what they would find. As they traveled, they made maps, they wrote in their journals, they described miles and miles of beautiful land with tall trees, good soil, and rushing rivers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to identify the who or the what of the paragraph that is the most important. What was the main idea or the who, the main who of this paragraph? Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark was our main who. Right. So now I've got my most important who, but I need to know the most important information of the who and the what. What did Lewis and Clark do? So I think the most important thing from the first paragraph about Lewis and Clark is that they explored the territory west of the Mississippi, and they described it in their maps and their journals. Right. So finally, what I'm going to do now, I've identified the who and the what of my paragraph, and I've identified the most important information about that who and the what. So now I'm ready to shrink this information into a really good main idea statement. Now, main idea statements are kind of tricky because you have to be careful on how many words you have in them. Main idea statements should only have 10 words. 10 words or less, excuse me, is all that we're allowed to have in our main idea statement. So I'm going to show you my main idea statement for this paragraph. So after reading the first paragraph, my main idea statement is, Lewis and Clark were first to explore the territory west of the Mississippi. Does that sound like a good main idea statement? Well, let's write it up here. Let's see. Lewis and Clark were first to explore the territory west of Lewis and Clark were first to explore the territory west of the Mississippi. Now, how many words did we say that our main idea statement was supposed to be? 10, you're right. Let's write that up here. 10 words. Let's count Miss Barton's words and see if I have the right amount of words in my main idea statement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Ooh. That's a little bit long. How many was it supposed to be? 10. How could I make this shorter? Well, let's see. What if I said, where's my eraser? If I took this part off right here, put a period right here. So now my main idea statement says, Lewis and Clark were first to explore the territory west. Let's see how many words I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have exactly 10 words. So is that a good main idea statement? Does that tell us the gist of the first paragraph? Yeah, it does. And it is 10 words or less. So that is how you write a main idea statement. we're going to practice both of these steps again. I am going to now read you the second paragraph in The Way West. Everybody please find the second paragraph and follow along with me as I read this to you. News about the wonders of the West spread. People began to dream about a new life and a new land. And before long, they began traveling west on the Oregon Trail. At first, there were only a few adventures. In 1843, 200 families crossed the Oregon Trail. Then, in 1448, gold was discovered in California. Soon after, thousands of people began heading west, hoping to make their dreams come true. So, in that paragraph, did Ms. Barton have any clunks, or was everything clicking for me? Hey, I don't think I had any clunks. I think everything clicked for me. Everything went smoothly. Yep. Okay, I'm going to reread that again, and we are going to get to the gist of it. All right, are you ready? News about the wonders of the West spread. People began to dream about a new life and a new land, and before long they began traveling west on the Oregon Trail. At first there were only a few adventures. In 1843, 200 families crossed the Oregon Trail. Then, in 1848, gold was discovered in California. Soon after, thousands of people began heading west, hoping to make their dreams come true. So now I'm going to get the gist of this paragraph. The main who or what in this paragraph is the people. The people. Okay? And I think the most important information about the people is that they traveled west on the Oregon Trail. They traveled west hoping to make their dreams come true, right? Great. So I'm going to now write my main idea statements, okay? Let's erase this one that we did a minute ago. All right. So my main idea statement for the second paragraph, we said the who of which was the people, and the most important information was that they traveled west on the Oregon Trail to make their dreams come true. So my main idea statement is going to read something like this. Let's see. People traveled west to make their dreams come true. Okay, people traveled west to make their dreams come true. Shall we count it and see how many words we're at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh. Will that work? That will work for my main idea statement. It tells me the who and the what, and it is less than 10 words. Okay, we're going to look at, let's see, packing for the journey. Ms. Barton is going to read to you Packing for the Journey. I want everybody to go there and follow along as I read it aloud. Traveling west was not easy. The Oregon Trail was thousands of miles long, and it took between 4 and 6 months to cross. Pioneers had to pack everything they would need in a covered wagon that was not much bigger than a double bed. Once food, tools, and supplies for the journey were packed, the wagon was nearly full. As a result, there was no room left for personal belongings. But the pioneers left behind more than the comforts of home and their special treasures. They said goodbye to family and friends they never expected to see again. I think I had a clunk in my reading. Not quite sure, I kind of struggled, and I'm not quite sure what the word belongings means. So we are going to, Spartan's going to work this out. So let's see, I'm going to erase territory here so that Spartan can work on our new word here, and I'm going to write up here the word belongings. Belongings. So now what am I going to do? My word, well, I know that when I have a clunk, I need to use the steps of the vocabulary strategy to help me find context clues, break it into parts, guess the meaning using context clues, and try it out in the original sentence to see if it makes sense. Help me understand the meaning. So that's what Miss Barton is going to do. So let's look. Step 1 says look for look for context clues. So let's see, let's look through there. Everybody look at the word personal. It's in the same sentence. That might be able to be used as a context clue. Yeah? What does personal mean? Your own? Yeah, your own. Personal is yours. Okay, now I want everybody to take a look at the 6th sentence. Count and find the 6th sentence of the paragraph. When you get there, find the word or the phrase special treasures. Special treasures. I think that could maybe be used as a context clue. You think so? I think so. I think belongings might mean personal, your things. Yeah. So step 2 now of the vocabulary strategy says that we need to break it into parts. We need to look for word part clues. Well, looking at this paragraph, I see 2 root words. 2 parts. I'm sorry, guys. Looking at this, I see 2 word parts. I see belong, the suffix or the prefix belong, and I see ing, the suffix. Okay? The root word belong in belonging, it means something belongs to you. You own it. All right? Step 3 says to guess the meaning using the context clues. Well, from the context clues, I think that belongings might be what a person owns. Okay? So step 4 says try out the meaning. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to substitute I'm going to substitute the meaning. Sorry, guys, we had a visitor, but they left. So let's start over. Step 4 says to try out our meaning in the original sentence to see if it makes sense. So I'm going to substitute what each person owned for personal belongings, okay? So listen as I read the sentence. As a result, there was no room left for what each person owned. What did the original sentence say? Let's read that again. As a result, there was no room left for personal belongings. And Miss Barton substituted each person. As a result, there was no room left for what each person owned. Does that make sense? It sure does. So Miss Barton is going to write that meaning here under belongings. We're going to put each person. We should put what each person owns. Let's try that sentence again. We want to make sure we write in complete sentences so that it makes sense and we remember and understand what we were saying. What each person owns. Awesome. All right, so now I'm going to reread Packing for the Journey, and this time we're going to read it to get the gist, to check our understanding, all right? Everybody follow along as I reread Packing for the Journey. Traveling west was not easy. The Oregon Trail was thousands of miles long, and it took between 4 and 6 months to cross. Pioneers had to pack everything they would need in covered wagons that was not much bigger than a double bed. Once food, tools, and supplies for the journey were packed, the wagon was nearly full. As a result, there was no room left for their personal belongings. But the pioneers left behind more than the comforts of home and their special treasures. They said goodbye to family and friends they never expected to see again. Now for the gist. The main idea of this paragraph, the main who or the what of this paragraph, is what the pioneers could take. What they could take on their journey is the main what of the paragraph. After reading the paragraph, I also think that the most important information is that they could only take food, tools, and supplies because the covered wagons were very small. Okay? So from what I know about the main what and the most important information, I can write my main idea statement. And I think it will go something like this. The pioneers could fit only necessary things into the covered wagons. Does that make sense? Pioneers could fit only necessary things in the covered wagons. Running out of room, guys. The pioneers could only fit necessary things in the covered wagons. So, does everybody so far, does anybody have any questions? Everybody understanding the process of click and clunk and getting the gist? How when we read a paragraph, when we understand everything, that means that it's clicking. And when we read a paragraph or a text and we're just not sure, and we have questions and we're confused and we're unfamiliar, what does that mean? It means we have a clunk. And how do we solve clunks? You're right, with the vocabulary strategy. And just as a review, getting the gist. What does that mean? What are we doing when we get the gist of a paragraph? We're shrinking it. We are shrinking it down. We're shrinking that paragraph down into a main idea, okay, about the who of it and the most important information about that who or what. All right? All right, so our next step in the collaborative strategic reading is wrap up. Wrap up. And when we wrap up, or when good readers wrap up, there are two different parts that they do. There's two different parts to wrapping up. Good readers ask and answer questions about what they read, and good readers review what they learned. Okay? So, think of it like this. When you ask and answer questions, you're going to think about the kinds of questions a teacher like Ms. Barton might think about when I give you a test. Okay? So what's going to happen is Ms. Barton is again going to model for you. I'm going to model generating questions about what we just read. Okay? Focusing on the ideas in my main ideas statement or the gists that I will. Oh, stop. So when we are focusing on our main idea statement or the gist, when we're forming our questions, we want to make sure our questions begin with who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I want to make sure that my questions reflect the three different types of QAR. Okay? Who remembers what the three different types of QAR are? Go ahead, say them. Right there. Think and search. Author and me. You're right. Good job. Okay, so from what we just read, I'm going to construct my questions. I'm going to write them up here on the board under the heading that says questions, okay? All right. So, my first question is, who explored the territory west of the Mississippi in the early 1800s? Who explored the territory west of the Mississippi in 1800s? Anybody remember? Lewis and Clark. Good job. Let's get a different marker to write our answers in. Lewis and Clark. Very good. Who can tell me what kind of a QAR this is? Anybody know? It's right there. You're right. It was right there at the beginning of our text. Right there. All right. So my next question is, what did the pioneers leave behind? What did Who remembers? What did the pioneers leave behind when they journeyed across the Oregon Trail to the west? They left behind their belongings, their personal belongings, their comforts of home, special treasures, and their family and their friends. I'm not going to write all that up there. That's a whole lot, and Miss Barton's starting to run out of space here. So who can tell me what kind of QAR that was? It was a think and search. You're right. Very good. All right, so Miss Barton has one more question from our reading, and it is, why do you think people were willing to pack up and head west? Why did all these people want to move west? Why were they willing to give up all of their personal belongings and special treasures and their family and their friends to journey all this way west? What do you think? I'm going to put that up here. Why do you think people were willing to pack up and head west? What do you remember from what we've read? Why do people want to go west? Why were they willing to do this? Because they thought they would get rich. They wanted to move and get rich and have a better life. You're right. And they thought that going west would do that for them. Right. All right, so that's the first part of wrap up, is asking and answering our questions. The second part of wrap up is the review. We're going to review what we learned, what we now know, what we learned from our reading. Okay? To review, it helps if we first go back to our brainstorm list over here and our predictions. We're going to look at our brainstorm list and our predictions, and we're going to confirm them, or we're going to revise them. Were they right, or were they not right, and do they need fixed? So everybody look at my brainstormed list here on the board. Let's see, my first brainstorm says pioneers traveled in covered wagons. And the other one says that pioneers traveled to the west. Well, are both of those correct? Do pioneers do both of those things? Yeah, they did. So both of my brainstorms were confirmed. So I'm going to put a little check mark right here. We got that. Those were good. Now let's look at my predictions. So I predicted that I would learn about the pioneers' journey west to Oregon in covered wagons. Did I learn something about their journey west to Oregon in covered wagons? I sure did. Put a check mark there. My second prediction was that I would learn what the journey was like for pioneers. Did I learn a little bit what their journey was like? I did. Check mark there. And my last prediction, my last prediction was that I would learn what the pioneers packed for their journey. No? Did we learn about what they packed for their journey? We sure did. So, all of my brainstorms and my predictions were confirmed in the text. So from the text, in my review column here, I'm going to write what I learned, okay? So from the text, I learned that it was a long journey and that the pioneers could pack only the essentials that would fit in the wagon. They could only pack the necessary items they needed, right? So up here under my review heading, I'm going to write, I learned it was a long journey that the pioneers could pack only essentials that sorry guys, kind of sloppy there. All right, so I learned that it was a long journey and that the pioneers could pack only the essentials that would fit in the wagon. Right? Okay. I learned something else though. I also learned other information. So now I'm going to write it down in my review as well. So I learned that people knew about the West from Lewis and Clark. Let's see. I learned that the Oregon Trail was thousands of miles long and took several months to cross. So I learned that the Oregon Trail was thousands of miles long and took months to cross. I know that people knew about the West from Lewis and Clark. And I learned that it was a long journey and that the pioneers could pack only the essentials that would fit in their wagons. So, can you see how these different strategies, they all helped better and enhance my understanding of the text. They helped me better understand the text. From my brainstorms to my predictions to my review every step of the way. It helped me to understand and better comprehend what I was reading. Okay, so now it's time for you guys to practice. You're going to try it with me. I'm going to guide you through. Let's fix this here. There we go. I'm going to guide you through the steps of collaborative strategic readings, CSR strategies, reading strategies. We're going to go through this together, and I'm going to guide you, okay? So now's the time you're going to be using that scratch paper and pencil that you picked up along with your mentor text, all right? So keep those handy. So what we're going to do, we want to first remember that good readers always do what? They always do what? Good readers always preview the reading before they read it. Who remembers what the parts of the preview strategy are? You're right. Scan, brainstorm what you already know, and predict what you will learn. I like the way you guys looked around the room and referenced what we already had. Good job. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and take a look at your mentor text. Remember that the topic of this text is Pioneers of the Oregon Trail. I want you to go ahead and look at me. Let me get me set up to where you are here. I would like you to take a look at the second page of your mentor text, as well as the third and the fourth page of your mentor text. I want you to scan those pages for what you notice, what graphic features you notice about those pages. Go ahead. All right, guys. So now that you've had time to preview and scan, you've had time to scan your text, now I want you to take your scratch paper and I want you to brainstorm. I want you to think about what you already know about the topic from your scan and any experiences you might have. Right? Go ahead. Think about that and then brainstorm some ideas on your scratch paper, just like Miss Barton did up here on the board. Okay, go ahead. All right. Who would like to share something that they brainstormed about what they know from their scan? You know what? Let's back up a little bit. Let's rewind. Miss Barton, we scanned, but we didn't talk about what we scanned. Well, let's back it up a minute. Let's talk about what you saw when you scanned your mentor text. Who can tell me something they saw during their scan? What graphic features you saw while you were scanning your mentor text? Go ahead. A sidebar. Yes, there was a sidebar. Right here is our sidebar. What else did you see during your scan? Boldface text, you're right. Right there is a boldface text. We've got wagon toe, a day on the trail, and the end of the trail. What else did you notice? A map. You're right. There is a map on the 3rd page of our mentor text. Okay. Now let's get back to our brainstorming. So we've done our scan now, and you've thought about it, and you brainstormed things on your scratch paper, what you already know about this text. So who would like to share? What do you already know about this text from your scan? Go ahead. Okay, the pioneers traveled through Idaho on their journey west. That's good. Write that. Traveled through Idaho on their journey west. Okay, that's a good. And how did you know that? You looked at the map. On the map that was in our text. Very good. One more person. What's something you already know about our text? The wagons were pulled by animals. Okay. Animals pulled the wagons. All right. So there we go. We've got 2 things that we brainstormed, or you guys brainstormed, that you already know about the text. So now it's time to make predictions about it, okay? So on your scratch paper again, what Miss Barton wants you to do is I want you to predict what you think you're going to learn after reading the selection. Now, before we do this, what does the word prediction mean? What does prediction mean? Who can tell me? A prediction is an educated guess based on clues in the text and what you already know about the topic. Right. Okay, so you are going to think about and use what you saw during your scan of the text and what you already know, your brainstorm, to make your prediction about what you might learn from reading the text. Go ahead and write some predictions down on your scratch paper. Right. Who would like to share their predictions? Would anybody like to share their predictions? We can write them up here on the board. What do you think you are going to learn from reading this mentor text from your scan and your brainstorm? Miss Barton's going to erase these. If it's okay with you, I'm going to erase my predictions so we have room to write your predictions up here, okay? Excuse me. I'll just go ahead and erase my brainstorm too so that it's not too confusing. All right. So, who would like to share? What are some of your predictions? Good. You predict you're going to learn about wagons, okay? I will learn about wagons. All right. What else? What else do you think you're going to learn from reading these sections of the text? You think you're going to learn about what they saw on their journey? Okay. I will learn about what they saw on their journey. Very good. All right. So now we've done our brainstorming. Have we done and our prediction? Are we done with the first step of the collaborative strategic reading strategy? Are we done with the preview step? We are. We have done all of the steps in the preview. So now we are ready to begin reading. What are we going to use during our reading to help us understand and comprehend our text? Right, we're going to use click and clunk and get the gist to help us figure out any unfamiliar words and get the gist and comprehend the reading, okay? So, let's review real quick. What does it mean when reading clicks? What does it mean when reading just clicks? Right, it means you understand everything that you read. Okay, so what does it mean when reading clunks? What does it mean when you have a clunk? You're right. It means that you don't understand, that there's some kind of confusion or something is unfamiliar to you and you do not understand something in your reading. So what we're going to do now is Miss Barton is going to read aloud the first paragraph of the section Wagons Ho. Okay? I'm going to read the first paragraph of Wagons Ho. I want everybody to find that and follow along as I read. And as I'm reading, I want you to listen and write down any clunks that you might any clunks in the reading, okay? Anything that you're unfamiliar with or you're not understanding, okay? So let's go. First paragraph, ready? Pioneers gathered at starting points between Independence, Missouri and Council Bluffs, Iowa, to join up with wagon trains heading west. It was safest to travel with 10 to 15 wagons in a group. Wagon trains did not set out until there was enough grass growing on the prairie to feed the animals along the way. At the same time, they could not wait too long. The wagons had to get over the mountains before it started to snow. Were there any clunks in what I just read, or was everything clicking? I think you're right. I think everything was clicking. Yes. All right. So now we are going to keep reading. Miss Barton is going to read paragraph 2 and 3 of Wagons Ho. Okay, so follow along. Okay. A wagon train on the move could be 1 mile long and 1 mile wide. Bumping along inside a cramped wagon was hard and uncomfortable way to travel. Pioneers often trudged beside the wagons instead. Consequently, most people walked slowly all the way to Oregon, nearly 2,000 miles. As the pioneers headed west, they watched for famous landmarks along the way. Some of the landmarks showed how far the pioneers had traveled. Others were especially steep mountain passes, or dangerous rivers that had to be crossed. Others were forts where the pioneers could get news and supplies. Right. Did anybody write down any clunks? Did anybody have any clunks in those 2 paragraphs that they wrote on their scratch paper? Go ahead. Who would like to share a clunk that they had during those 2 passages? Cramped, okay. Trudged. Landmark, all right. All right, so who remembers? What do we do to figure out a clunk? Our vocabulary strategy, that's right. And who remembers the steps? Context clues, word parts, context clues and guessing, and try out the meaning. You're right. All right. So go ahead. I want you to go ahead and I want you to try and fix up any clunks that you have using the vocabulary strategy on your scratch piece of paper. Go ahead. All right. All right, so in CSR, you get the gist after reading each paragraph or each section of the text. What do you do to get the gist of what you read? That's right. You shrink the paragraph into a gist or a main idea statement of how many words? 10 words or less. That's right. So let's follow the steps for paragraph shrinking to get the gist of the first paragraph of Wagons Ho. Okay? So in that first paragraph of Wagons Ho, who or what is the paragraph mostly about? Who or what is the first paragraph of Wagons Ho mostly about? Ms. Barton is going to do some erasing here so we can write a new main idea statement here, okay? All right, who can tell me what or who is the main idea of that paragraph? Okay, wagon trains, good, that's good. Wagon trains are definitely a big what in that first paragraph, okay? So now who can tell me, what do you think the most important part of that paragraph is? What is the most important part of the first paragraph of Wagons Ho? Okay, the most important enough so that they could get over the mountains before it started to snow that night. So now we take this information about our what and our important information, and we need to shrink it down into a main idea statement. That's 10 words or less. Okay? So go ahead and do that on your scratch paper right now. Make a main idea statement about paragraph 1 based on the what of wagon trains and the important information that they had to be early enough to make it over the mountains before it started to snow. Okay, who would like to share their main idea statement? Would somebody care to share their main idea statement? Go ahead. Ms. Barton is going to write your main idea statement up here on the board just as I did with mine. Okay? So go ahead when you're ready. So we have wagon, trains, had to set out early enough so they could get over the mountain before it started snowing. All right. Now, everybody take a look at this. Let's count it. How many words should our main idea statement be? 10 or less. So let's count and see if we have 10 or less words in our main idea statement right here. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There are 19 words. That is too many. You're right. So how are we going to shrink this more so that we can use it as a main idea statement? Anybody have any ideas? What if, okay, so you think I should take off before it started snowing? Okay, let's try that. I'll erase that right there. We'll put a period here after mountain. Let's read it. Wagon trains had to set out early enough so they could get over the mountain. Let's count. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We are still at 15 words. Let's see. What if we said wagon trains left likely to avoid snow in the mountains. Okay? Let's count it now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Will that main idea statement work? It will. How many words are there? There are 10. Does it give us the gist of the paragraph? It sure does. The wagon trains had to leave before the snow to get over the mountains. Very good. Very good. All right. So now I think we're ready to wrap it up. Are we ready to wrap it up? Well, remember that when good readers are finished reading, they wrap up their reading. So, who remembers what the two parts of the wrap-up strategy are? Ask and answer questions and review what you learned. So, what's the first thing we do when we wrap up? We ask questions. And how do we ask and answer questions? You think like a teacher and ask questions like she might or Miss Barton might on a test. You're right. Okay, so let's see. Let's erase Miss Barton's questions because we are done with these. We do not need them right now. We are going to get ready for your own questions. All right. So I want you to think, and I want you to develop questions about the text on your scratch paper. Now, who remembers how we are supposed to start any questions that we have when we're right? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. You're right. Who remembers what the types of QAR are? Right there. Think and search. Author and me. Very good. All right. So go ahead and think and develop your questions that you have based on the sections of our reading. Okay, who would like to share one of their questions they had? What is one of the questions that you would ask and answer from our reading? Go ahead. Okay, so how big was a wagon train? Big was a wagon train? Can anybody answer that? How big was a wagon train? Eric, what was your answer for that? A wagon train could be 1 mile long and 1 mile wide. And Eric, what kind of QAR was that? Right there, you're right. Good job. All right, somebody else, give me one of your questions. Gail, go ahead. What was important about the timing of the trip? All right, there we go. Let's write that. What was important about the timing of the trip? Who knows? What was important about the timing of their trip across the Oregon Trail? Gail, would you like to share your answer? That's right. They couldn't leave until there was enough grass growing to feed the animals, but yet they still had to leave to get there before it started snowing so that they could get over the mountains. You're right. Gail, what kind of QAR was that? I think and share. Good job. All right. I need one more person who would like to share their question that they have. Go ahead, Tom. Okay. What do you think would be the most challenging landmark on the trail and why is his question? So we're going to write that down. What do you think would be the most challenging part of the trail and why? Does anybody have any thoughts to Tom's question? What do you think would be the most challenging landmark on the trail and why? Challenging landmark because their covered wagons could be destroyed and they were almost at the end. They were almost destroyed at the end at Laurel Hill. So he thinks that would be the most challenging one. Tom, what kind of QAR is your question? Author and me. Good job. You guys are right on with those QARs. All right. Well, we have brainstormed. We have predicted what we were going to learn. We have read our selection. We have fixed up any clunks we had. We've gotten the gist and the main idea statements of the paragraphs. We have developed and answered our questions. So now it's time for us to review. And remember that good readers review and write down the important information that they learned, right? Okay. So I want you to think about the reading and the important information that you learned, and I want you to make a list on your scratch paper of what you learned from the reading. Okay, go ahead. like to share something that they learned from our reading? For our review. Something you learned. Go ahead. Okay, she said that I learned for safety, wagons traveled in big groups called trains. Very good. Who can tell me something else they learned from our reading? Go ahead. You're right. The timings of their trip was very important because the animals needed to eat. Timing of the trip was important because the animals needed to eat. You're right. Somebody else like to share what they learned from the reading. Go ahead. You're right. The trip was very uncomfortable. The trip was very long and uncomfortable, and many people walked. Right. Okay. The trip was long and so we have, I learned for safety, wagons traveled in big groups called trains. Somebody else learned, I learned timing of the trip was important because the animals needed to eat. And I learned the trip was long and uncomfortable, and many people walked. Everybody, I want you to give me a thumbs up if you think you have a good understanding and know how to use collaborative strategic reading to help you understand and comprehend a text. Give me a thumbs up if you think you get it and you know. Very good. All right, you guys are, let me tell you about what we're going to do today. Before we get going on our independent work, you guys are going to work in partners. You're going to work with your reading partner, and you are going to use collaborative reading strategies. You're going to use the CSR strategies here. You're going to read with your partner. Find it here. You are going to read A Day on the Trail. Everybody find A Day on the Trail and The End of the Trail. Okay? Remind students, let's see, students, that when we preview before we read, We need to do what? We need to scan, brainstorm, and predict. We use click and clunk and get the gist of it while we're reading. And then after we're done with reading, we follow it up with wrap up. And that's where we ask and answer questions and review what we learned. All right? So as you're working with your reading partner on these last two sections of the text, I want you to work together, talk about. I'm going to leave all of this up on the board. I want you to look at it, reference it, talk to each other, and work through each of the steps to help you better understand, okay? To help your understanding and comprehension of the reading, and to help understand any words that you're not familiar with, okay? And go ahead and flip over your scratch paper, or if you used up all your scratch paper, go ahead and feel free to get another one out and write it down like we just did during our guided practice. Write the steps out like you did before, okay? Now, when we're working with our reading partners, it's very important that we remember to listen to, support, and work collaboratively. Collaboratively. What does collaboratively mean? Together. You are right. So we want to make sure we work collaboratively and cooperatively. All right. You may move to your reading spots with your partner and get started.